Welcome to Leave No Doubt, sponsored by Connection Technologies. I'm very lucky to have been joined by a football legend, an ex-assistant manager of mine from my time with Bristol Rovers and a huge influence on my life and my career, Marcus Stewart. Marcus, thank you for joining me.
Hey, Joe.
How you doing?
All right.
We're sat here at the Memorial Stadium. It's snowing today, which is a bit funny, but what sort of memories have you got of this place when you come back?
Really good ones. I mean, as a player, I was at Bristol Rovers, but we played at Twerton Park, which was in Bath. So we're a bit out of the way. But that was a great upbringing as a player. And I was quite successful, did all right. We got to Wembley, play our final, but lost to Huddersfield. So I've always wanted to come back to Rovers to kind of finish what I started, if that makes sense. So when I had the opportunity to come back, originally as youth team coach, then a reserve team manager, and then assistant manager under Darryl. You don't know how it's going to work. There was troubled times at the start. And then we kind of kicked on, and then we became successful. And we got 2 promotions, as you know, from the conference, and then from League 2 to League 1. So that kind of laid a ghost for me, because, although it was a different ground, it's the same fans, maybe a bit older, some younger ones coming through. And as a coach, it's the same feeling as a player when you get promotion. So for me, to come back here and do that, laid a ghost to rest, that's for sure. To come back here now, I've been back a couple of times since I've left. And it does bring back some memories, the long walk across the pitch to the dugout. I remember in the last 8 games, when we got relegated to the conference from League 2 under Darryl, we had 8 games to kind of keep us up, really. That game was a weird game. They forgot their kit. I think it was Mansfield forgot their away kit, so we had to give our away kit to them. So they beat us in our away kit. Off the back of that, we got relegated that day, and that was a long walk back from that dugout to the tunnel to the dressing room. So that was the negative side of it. But then, the scenes after Brownie's goal last minute, Dagenham going 1-0 up and us ending up winning it. It was Dagenham, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Dagenham. And then us winning it last minute, almost last kick of the game. I remember Stuart Naylor, the goalkeeper coach, was sat next to me. He was like a little boy. It was exciting, there was chances coming left and right. We're putting wide, hitting the post. And Nels went to me, and it must have been about 20, 30 seconds left. And he went, Stewie, we're going to get another chance. We're going to get another chance. And he looked at me like a little kid. It's like he's just got a bag of sweets. We're going to get another chance. And we did. And it was Brownie who put it in. So those sorts of things stay in your memory. As you would know, you have a different view of it as a player, Joe, but those sort of things stick in my mind. And I'll always have great memories coming back here, because it's the club I made most appearances for in my career. Of all the clubs I was at, this is the most appearances I made for. It was a club where I got my only 30-goal haul in a season, and I think there's only 2 of us that has done that since 1920. And it's a club where I laid a couple of ghosts to rest and got a couple of promotions, and it was a positive influence.
See, when even when you're just speaking there, Stewie, and the first thing that I want to get into with is you just light up, your face lights up when you talk about positive things. You've just mentioned, obviously, your outstanding memories of, Bristol Rovers and the Memorial Stadium, and you sort of flick past relegation as in like that it was difficult, but then focused purely on the good moments. And listening to interviews that you've done, certainly recently, back from when you were a player, there are some of them on YouTube. If people want to go in there and see them, but that mindset of being so positive and always being able to see, the best of any situation is quite rare, really. It's not as common as you'd imagine, especially in football. What do you think it is about you, Stewie, that's been able to sort of be like that, or become like that?
I don't know. No one's ever taught me to be like that. I just think you have to have that as a player. I think I say this all the time, and I hope people understand me. You have to have the ability to get rid of disappointments like that Now, those disappointments can be anything in life. A relative passing away, not passing your driving test, failing your exams at school. You have to get rid of them. You can't do anything about that and go on to the next thing. In football, in terms of, we were just chatting about this, not playing week to week, you got to get over that somehow and see the positive in that. Although it's very difficult, because I find that quite hard as a player to not be playing. I felt it was a personal thing. Someone didn't play me. I think it's different now, like we spoke about. It might be, you just give a pass away. You got to get over it. You've missed a chance. Get over it. And I think I always seen the best in the next situation. Next chance I'm going to get, I'm going to do something different. Or I'm going to do the same again, but I'm going to put it a certain way. Next chance I get to play a game, I'm going to do the best I can. So yeah, I've always seen things half full, not half empty. And no one told me how to do that. I think I've just done it in my life, and I don't see a person listen, I see the bad things in them, but I don't see them for the bad things. I see them for what they can do well and what their personality is like in a good way. I just don't. An old manager I worked for towards the end of my career called Paul Tisdale, he's seen the best in every single person. So he probably had a little bit of influence on that, but I was always ready to kind of see that side of things. And I would say he kind of made me understand why. And the why for me is because you're going to get the best out of someone if you make them feel good, if you understand parts of them, and if you understand where they fit in a team in a positive manner for me. So, and I've always looked like that, and I won't have anyone who is a mood hoover. You know what a mood hoover is? A mood hoover is someone who's negative, moans to you about things, nothing's right, everything's someone else's fault, not theirs. Don't want any mood hoovers around me. Never wanted mood hoovers. I can take it for 10 minutes, because sometimes as a coach, you have to be a counsellor. Sometimes as a player, you have to be a counsellor. If someone's not playing, they want a little chat with you, your mate. So there's elements of, you have to listen to those mood hoovers, but they ain't going to be in my company for very long. And I ain't going to go back to them very often. If they've got positive things to say, I'll listen.
See, Stewie, that being positive and what you've just said there comes quite natural to you. It's looking back, obviously, on you growing up and professional football becoming a realistic ambition of yours. Was it always that way, or did you make a conscious decision at some point? Because I'm trying to get, for people listening here that might not have that same ability to see the positives and everything. Was that a choice that you made, or was that sort of just a natural thing?
I think it was a natural thing. I just think it happened. I think it just happened. The adversity in life that people have had, that helps if you deal with it in the right way. But I just think it's a natural thing. And if you can be that person, then be it. If you need to go and see a psychologist to be that person, do it, because it makes you feel good. And I promise you, it benefits your everyday life as well as whatever job you're going to do, whether it's football or policeman or policewoman, it will benefit you. Because you won't come in grumpy every day. You'll be moody, you won't be bitter. But I understand everyone's not like me.
Is that what you suggested? Like if say, for example, in your coaching role, you had players obviously with these mood hoovers that you'd spoken about. There wasn't actually many of them when I worked with you, because you and obviously Darryl created a team environment where that didn't really exist. But say, for example, if there was, like, what would you, obviously, how would you try and help those kinds of players? I'm trying to obviously get some sort of information that people who are naturally negative might be able to use to sort of change their ways.
I will try and be as transparent with those people as I can. I think transparency from a coach's point of view to a player's point of view, I learned over the years that you can tell the ones that aren't telling the truth. You're not playing because of this reason or what. You can tell which ones those are, and you can tell the ones that are actually mean the fact that you're not playing for that reason, because they're transparent with you. I remember a conversation with Mick McCarthy once, and it was quite straight, as you can imagine. It was a case of, Stewie, you've been shit for the last 9 games, so I ain't playing this game. It was like as blunt as that. But that was just how Mick was. Whereas on the reverse side of that, he would be as positive to me, like, doing well, you're still playing, you know, that's... And there was times, one time he said to me, which made me feel good, to settle those negative feelings. So I think managers can pick up on this a bit, and coaches. There's nothing worse as a player, Joe, I don't think, whatever position you're playing in, when you play a game, then you don't play the next. You play the game, don't play the next, play the game. And for a striker, particularly, if you didn't score in that particular game, you almost knew you weren't going to play the next game for whatever reason, probably because you didn't score a goal or the team didn't win. He come up to me and went, Marcus, you're going to play the next 4 games. You're going to start them anyway. I was like, right, okay. Not necessarily going to finish, but you're going to start the next 4 games. So like, if you don't score Saturday, don't worry about Tuesday because you're going to start again. And that's always stuck in my mind. And I've tried to push that on the managers that I've worked with to kind of settle the anxiety of a player. So those sort of things help me, and I've tried to take it into my coaching.
There's a famous story as Neil Warnock talks about with Taarabt when no one else could get the best out of him. And he speaks about how he told him, like, you're going to play in the next game. And if you don't play very well, you'll play the next one. If you don't play very well in that one, you'll play the next one. And apparently, obviously, that was the period of time at QPR where he sort of got the best out of him and he was super talented. But, you know, I'm interested, Stewie, obviously, like day to day, when, you know, in a training environment, especially for you as you were growing up, obviously as a player and starting to understand your game. You've just said there that a little bit earlier, you said you take it personally if for whatever reason you didn't play. How does that translate to this positive mindset that you had? Like, how were you able to get over those, you know, those feelings of disappointment quickly enough to be able to go back in? Because more often than not, just, you know, people who aren't familiar with your career, Stewie, if, you know, super successful. So you obviously were able to get over disappointments pretty quickly, even if you did take that as personal attacks.
It's a good point, Joe, because there was times, probably the only times in my career where I thought certain managers it was a personal, I'm not playing you for this reason, for that reason, because of whatever I've done or whatever I didn't do. It's probably the only time I struggled to deal with that a bit. The only time.
Welcome to the Leave No Doubt podcast.
That little
I'm
bit
so excited
to
welcome our new sponsor.
I had a temper, don't get me wrong, on the pitch.
Technologies.
I had a bit of temper.
A market leader in business-to-business tools,
someone
ranging
kicked
from
me.
business mobile,
little black book and
hosted telephony, and fixed line
That was
services.
just how I was. I had that fire
Head
in
over
my
to
belly.
their website at
That pilot used to become to
fill in their
flames
inquiry web form
on
and
fire
find
when
out
I-
how Connection Technologies
felt
can support your business
It's a
moving
personal
forward.
between the manager. And how would I deal with it? I always think I'd definitely go and get pissed on the Saturday night, that's for sure. That was one way of doing it. But I always felt the training ground was your sanctuary. And, you know, you're not playing on a Saturday. You've got all Saturday night to think about it, Sunday to think about it. Monday's a new start because there's a game Tuesday or a game Saturday. It was a new start. So the Monday was a new start. And you've had 2 days to think about why you didn't play, and then you come into training and thinking, right, what can I do to play the next game? And I like to think I always trained my hardest, always. And it was my sanctuary, the training ground, a time where I could chat to mates, because you were mates, teammates, your mates. Some you liked, some you didn't. Most I did. And it was time to go and train, and I wasn't thinking about what I was thinking about 2 days before. I wasn't thinking about what's going on in family life. Wasn't thinking about anything. I was there playing football, something I enjoyed. So it was my sanctuary. You know, there was times, at Bristol City when I wasn't playing, I used to run back from the training ground because training didn't give enough out for me. Didn't give me enough. So I ran back just to keep that extra bit of fitness up and to train for what's around the corner. Now, for what's around the corner, so you train on that Monday, Tuesday, you don't get picked again. Okay, you don't get picked again. And you've not trained properly, you're not going to go into the next game, whether it's for the club you're at that time, in a positive mindset because you're looking back in the previous 2 weeks you trained and you've not trained properly. So I always train for what's around the corner. So that was one scenario, playing your next game for the club you're at. Or it was training for what's around the corner. If that manager didn't want you, you're going to go into a new club and you're going to go in as fit as you possibly could, because your mind's in the right place, because you trained pretty hard for the last 3 weeks, even though you're not played games, and you go into a new club to impress that new manager and them new founders. That's how I kind of looked at it. Train for what's around the corner. And that helped me keep me sane. Luckily, I love exercise. I was one that wanted to run around. I was one that wanted to get involved. I was one that wanted to get a sweat on. And I think that helped me. Some footballers don't like exercise, Joe, as you probably know. They don't want to run around. They don't want to, they want to be a technical player. No. Mick used to say, I don't know if you heard this saying yourself, Joe, where it was like, let the runners run and the players play. You heard that saying? I remember saying that to Mick McCarthy once. He went, yeah, but Stewie, what if you can do both? And I thought, oh, yeah. I've heard it from the players' side of you. And he's right. You got to be able to do both in football. And luckily I could do. I wasn't quick, but I was long distance. I could beat most people.
You're able to talk about holding yourself accountable for all this stuff, Stewie, quite easily, quite naturally, sort of. But as we know in football, that doesn't happen a lot. Not all players are accountable, and we'll get onto it in a little bit. One of the best, even though it's simple, one of the best pieces of advice that you ever gave me daily was, not to me, but in general, was don't be a dickhead. That was something that sort of echoes in my mind now, especially like in a team environment. But how much benefit is there, do you think, for players to be held accountable, to take responsibility, to not point fingers, to not look for blame in others? Because that's quite popular in football, but you don't seem to want to do that or have done that at all.
I think you have to take the excuses away from players as much as you can, to stop them making excuses up to why they're not playing well, why we're not winning. That's if you've got a group that working like you lot, Joe, if that makes sense. Luckily, we were pretty professional. Training was normally on time. Everything was set up when you come out. Generally, you kind of need a game plan most weeks. If the lads that weren't playing, they still got their half an hour's training and ready for the next game when they played. So I think we're pretty good at that. So, the dickhead thing, there wasn't any. But I think players can be accountable for the way they train. I think that's for sure. I think, I don't like to blame players. I've never have done. I think as long as everything, in a nutshell, as long as everything has been done correctly in the training environment all week, I think the players should have no excuse. Because then they're accountable. If things in training don't go to plan, I don't know, for instance, I know the training ground was shut for a day, or I don't know, the balls, cones and bibs didn't turn up because of, I don't know, the kit van wasn't taxed or whatever. They've probably got a bit of an excuse, so you just try and eliminate those things for me and be as professional as you can. When it comes to doing coaching sessions, you're not going to get things right. And I'm quite open for people to question me. Not while it's going on, but if you come up after, what's that? What I remember you once actually coming up to me after. I'd done a video analysis on players not tracking players. I don't know if you remember that. I dug a couple people out. I think it was you. It was you. Right. It's something like Billy Davis used to do, and he used to dig out. He won't dig out the person who it was, but the person watching the analysis would know that it was them, and he was generally a centre midfield player. And I remember getting the little laser up, not tracking his runner, look, goal. Not tracking his runner, look, goal. Not tracking his runner, look, goal. I mean, counter-attacks. And I remember you come up to me and you went, Marcus, I like that, but he said, I'm not so sure the lads that looked at it would have liked that. I went, I know, Joe, but for today I had to do it. Along those lines. So, and I'm open for people to question and have conversations and debates, because I don't think I know everything still to this day, and I'll learn off everyone. So I think you got to be open-minded with the players as well. And I said this transparent with them in some sort of way. Why we do, a senior player, for instance, might come up, a young lad might not. Why are we playing this all week? This week when we've done brilliant in the last 3 games. And then it's about them giving them the answers. So there's no excuse. Well, he's got a big lad at the back, can't run, so we're going to put a little lad so we can little spin. And off the back of that conversation, they kind of get it, and then that senior player might pass it along the group. So that's the transparency I think you have to have, and make their mind settled, whether it's training or whether it's the way we're playing.
Welcome to the Leave No Doubt podcast. I'm so excited to welcome our new sponsors, Connection Technologies, a market leader in business-to-business tools ranging from business mobile, hosted telephony, and fixed line services. Head over to their website at www.connection-technologies.co.uk, fill in their inquiry web form and find out how Connection Technologies can support your business moving forward. People who hear the word Marcus Stewart or the name Marcus Stewart will associate that with, everybody watches Premier League goals on the telly and you've had such a successful career, mate, scored loads of goals, that they'll see that version of Marcus Stewart. What I really want to ask you is that your ability to handle big moments very well, because you don't score loads of goals and in the playoff finals and in the big games that you did, without having the ability to take these big moments, take the anxiety, take the nerves, take the pressure, and handle that all in that one precise action that you were able to do so often. And that's sort of like any striker, but you did that so successfully for such a long time. What is it, do you think, about you that was able to not only handle the pressure of that moment, but be able to execute a successful action like right in that split second?
Training. And I'll tell you why. A lot of players train. They might do a crossing shooting session or a shooting session. And I would picture myself, it might be an unopposed one, but I would picture myself getting across someone, or I would picture myself having a shot. Because it can be false sometimes, no opposition. You just shoot him. But the goal don't move. The keeper's there, generally, in crossing shooting. So you got to do the right thing at the right time. And I think if you can get into good habits early, in terms of finishing techniques, timing of runs in the box, timing of runs in behind defenders, those pictures don't change. Even though there's players on the pitch, those pictures don't change. You're doing it unopposed, and then you're doing it up against the player. You got to take your movements, for me, off where the ball is, not where the player is. And that's what I did. So I had the ability, actually, and I spoke about this, to imagine myself playing against a player, even though there was no one there, and understanding what run I had to make wherever the ball was on a cross, whether it was near the touchline, whether it was near the byline, whether it was near the corner of the box, whether it was an in-swing or out-swinger, whether it was the full-back had the ball, going to put it over the top, whether it was the midfielder, give me a bit of eye contact. I had the ability to make the runs and not worry about that there wasn't players there. You just got to take your position off the ball. And that I did that in games. Timing was training. It can be your worst enemy, because if you get into bad habits in training and you don't have the ability to imagine yourself on the pitch in real time Saturday, Tuesday night, you can almost be training in the wrong way. So I think you have to have the ability to imagine someone on the pitch in an unopposed situation. And then when it becomes opposed, attack, be defensive, whatever, however they do it, then the picture looks the same.
I'm smiling, Stu, because I think that's incredible that you're able to imagine those scenarios, obviously, in training unopposed, and you obviously took that mindset every day whilst you were practicing, and obviously ended up going so well on match day so often. I actually spoke to the last podcast I did last Wednesday with a sports psychologist, and he was talking about the mindset skills, and one of them was imagery, and players being able to obviously imagine themselves doing this, that and the other. And I sort of played devil's advocate and said, but what if my natural image is of me doing something badly or of me making a mistake? How am I able to change that? It doesn't sound as if that you had those thoughts naturally. What was it? You know, how important? How much did it benefit you? This ability to, you know, envision yourself in those moments, and the imagery that we're talking about, obviously with the sports psychologist. How much did that benefit? Do you think?
There was no psychologist involved in this. It was me teaching myself.
Or how did you manage it? Where did you come up?
I don't know, but I did it.
But you never had a conversation with anybody growing up. It was
at my time at Ipswich, a little bit. Guy called Ken Way. A little bit. I remember going into his office once, and it didn't have to have a set time. It was literally, Marcus is going to be in. Do you want 20 minutes? Yeah. No. I remember going to his office once. First met him, really got on with him. Psychologist, I'm a bit on the back foot with one or two of them. There was one at Bristol City who I didn't like. And I walked in the office and sat down. He asked me a couple of questions. He went, right, you can go. I went, well, I ain't got to see you. Just go. And that was it. I was in there 2 minutes. So other times I've met him, I've said, listen, if I'm going for a bad time, what can I do? And I remember him saying to me, well, just before the game kicks off, just go in the toilet, a quiet place, find it your own, and just close your eyes and picture yourself doing certain things on the pitch. That was a guy called Ken Way. And I used to do that sometimes, but it didn't come from that.
But these big moments I'm talking about, Stewie, not only obviously were you envisioning them before they were happening, you were sort of almost manifesting all these things happening for you, but you also had the bravery to try all this stuff. Obviously, when it came down to it, you know, watching highlights of some of your goals just yesterday, you're on, you know, you've playing Southampton away, you're on 2 goals and you dink a pen for a hat-trick. Like you got goalkeepers screaming out at you and you just, with ease, sort of like faking to shoot and going round them. That's sort of like having so much courage. You know, I know a striker's instinct obviously is to score, but scoring the way that you did is, you know, it takes real bravery, real courage to try those things.
I'd say it's not courage, it's not giving a shit if you miss.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
Because you're going to get another chance.
Is that how you saw it?
In a way, I kind of I just thought of that then. That's what it is. I never got to the ball and thought, shit, I missed a chance, I'll get another one. But I remember, do you know, going around goalkeepers? I remember doing that when I was 7 years old, playing street football.
So sort of developed from a really early age, yeah.
No one taught me. Just I remember going around someone, just got a vivid memory of when I was 6, 7, of me going around someone, putting it in, and everyone just looking at me like the 10, 12, 13-year-olds that you're playing against, who were, when you're 7, they're quite big lads, just looking at me going, what? It's just done. So I remember doing that the first time, and that's kind of stuck with me. No one coached me that. When I was a player, at any age group, with a qualified coach, no one taught me how to go around a goalie. Not once.
Just instinct.
Just instinct. And I don't know how sometimes things like that you can coach that.
But talk to me about, so instinct obviously happens in a split second. So the keeper rushes out, you go round him. But the moments where you have got time to think, let's take that, you know, you're on 2 goals, you're up for a hat-trick, and you chip a penalty down the middle of the goal. You've got time to think about that. How were you able to muster up the courage to try things like that?
Be different. So that penalty, I don't do that to mock the goalie and make him look a bit.
You've done it a few times. Yeah.
I think I've done it 3 times in my career, I think. 3 times. One was at Wolves, pressure penalty, 0-0. I scored to make it 1-0. There was one somewhere else, and there was one at Southampton. I forget where the other one was. I always done things to keep people guessing. I understand you can't do is it called a Panenka now? I don't know.
A Panenka, I think it might be, yeah.
Yeah, Panenka now. If you do that every 2, 3 penalties, yeah, you're going to, or every 5 even, the keeper's going to stand there, you're going to look a bit. So I always go left. As soon as I went up to a penalty, I made my mind up before I went there. I would never make my mind up on the run-up or change my mind. I knew. Before I got there, I put the ball down, I'm going to go that corner. And I think the times it can go wrong for you is as you're running up, you're going, I'm not sure about that corner, so I'm going to go the other one. So you've got to make your mind up pretty quick. Just do it, make your mind up, do your research on the goalkeepers, which way they dive, which you can do nowadays. So I always changed it up. My default was that left default, but generally I go the other side, and sometimes I do the chip. And I always did it to keep people guessing. So I was thinking ahead, because I knew goalkeepers would think about what I'd done 4 penalties ago. So I would always think about, okay, I'll do this now, because next time I play, he might just stand still, which he ain't going to dive. So it was always, there was an element of planning ahead in it, which is weird.
And you didn't have any. Look, I'm going to use the word fear, Stewie. And the reason why I use the word fear, and I'm sort of like that translate not just you taking penalties, but sort of your whole game really, because these days, like if I take myself for example, I don't think I'm able to. I know for a fact that the right thing to do is to get over disappointment immediately. However, in the way that I play, I put a lot of pressure on myself, arguably, to use the ball well. And if for whatever reason it breaks down on me, or I give the ball away, or I miss a pass, I usually take that quite badly. That sort of adds weight to my body. It sort of puts weight on my shoulders, and it's not that easy for me, even though I know it should be, to just get over that sort of disappointment. Where I'm going to use the word fear. You seem to have no fear. You seem to be able to get over disappointment quite quickly.
There was times, Joe, when you're going through a bad time and you're giving the ball away, and you're not seeing the ball well. You're seeing the ball like a tennis ball, and it's not. Your touch isn't right. Your pass isn't right. Your default pass, the little clip or whatever your default game is not going right. For a striker's point of view, it's holding the ball up. You've got first touch has got to be good. Help get players at the pitch. When things aren't going too well on the pitch, I always said to myself, right, Marcus, you just tried to switch the ball 3 times from left to right on your left foot, 40-yard pass, and it's got cut out by the fullback. What are you doing? Back to default. Pass. Get yourself some confidence. Give it simple. 1-2 touch. Give it simple. Win your flick-ons. Get hold of the ball. Give it simple. Nothing too difficult. That was it. Got myself back in credit in my mind. Just get yourself back in credit. Get your passes going again. If I could take someone made a great run, and I could pick him out, no, just 2 minutes, just keep the ball. Give it simple, piss off somewhere else. Just get yourself back in credit. And that seemed to work for me. Just give it simple. So I was one of those people that like to come off midfield and get on the turn, a bit like, I can't compare myself to him, a bit like Harry Kane does, now. I like to come off and then I'd look for runners off me. I didn't mind doing that. But then there's times I'd come off, look, no, I can't give the ball away again. It'd be like a 10-yard pass. So I would refuse not a simple ball, but a good run at the right time, just to get myself in credit sometimes, psychologically.
How do you think, we obviously talked about your career a lot, Stewie, and how you were able to be quite successful, and a lot of people now talk about like the modern game and how sort of football has changed in any ways. But obviously from now when you're watching football, and obviously you're working with Yeovil at the moment, but your time as assistant manager at Rovers, and what are the overriding differences do you think between the game that you played, the version of football that you played, and sort of what football at the elite level is now?
Social media plays a massive part on with your mind. Don't go on it. Don't go on it if you don't like being. Don't go on it. If after a game, go on it if you want to in normal life things. But if you got an ego and you go on social media and you think you've played well that day, and you're getting pelters off people, whatever fan group, whatever club you're at. Don't go on it if you can't deal with it. Social media's, if you're strong enough minded, yeah. If you're not, don't do it.
Interesting.
It's a bit like back in the day, you only had the Sun or the Star or the Daily Mail or the News of the World, and you'd look at see how many stars you got. Because there was no social media back then, so you look. And I would only look at those marks if I thought I did well. I wouldn't look at them if I knew I did shit. I didn't want to see I had a 2 out of 5 or a 1 out of 5 or I don't know. So I would only look at something if I thought I did well. But even then, you go, what? I've only got a 3 out of 5. I should have got, there was elements that I could deal with it. It didn't bother me. But there's a lot of people, I think, footballers, I think that listen, we've all got a bit of an ego, haven't we? Don't get me wrong, we all have. But you've got to be able to deal with the disappointment of what might be. You can't just think, it's going to be 5 out of 5 stars, when it might not be that. Everyone has a different opinion. not everyone's thinking like you think or I think. They all think differently and see different sides of you. So if you can't deal with the disappointment of someone giving you a bit of stick on social media, don't go on it. If you can deal with it, brilliant.
It's interesting, Stu, when I asked that question, obviously didn't know what you were going to say, whether it would be like a physical thing or a technical thing, but social media is the one thing that sticks out in your mind as to,
I think so.
Yeah.
Psychologically. I think the game, if you've got the physical ability, like we say, if you can run and you can play, runners run, players play, and then your mind's brilliant, and you understand and you listen to coaches and you listen to what you need to listen to, not what you want to listen to and want to hear, you've got a great chance.
Actually, some of the guys I've had conversations on this podcast with, I think the one that sticks out to me the most, the guy that I grew up with called Matt Ritchie, we were in the same youth team at Portsmouth together, and he never, ever in his life has had social media. Like nothing. Just doesn't, not that he doesn't care about people's opinions, because even he says, acknowledged that when he was growing up, he was obviously doing well when people's positive feedback made him feel good and he wanted more of that. But in terms of going on social media and looking for validation of supporters or whatever it is, he says he's never done it, and he doesn't miss it. It's not something that he's got like fear of missing out of, because it doesn't affect him. I certainly probably was the other way. I don't do social media now, but when I was first growing up, I wanted to know what people thought of me. And I can remember a story, I probably told this story on this podcast, Stewie, but I thought I'd played quite well for Bournemouth when I was a young player. I got home and parents saying, "How do you think the game went today? Did you think you did all right?" I'm saying, "Yeah, I thought I was good today. I feel good." Mum said, "Oh, people online aren't saying you were very good." Oh. I was like, and then at that moment I thought well, that's really affected me. After the next couple of weeks, I thought maybe I'm not very good. Maybe what I think I'm good at, I'm not that good at. So I remember having to tell my parents, look, don't tell me anything ever again as to what people had told me, and I sort of never went looking for it after that. How do you think?
Good decision.
How do you think that you would have found playing now with all the social media going on? How would you have dealt with it? Would you have gone on it or not?
No.
You'd have stayed away.
Not social media now. So no, I would have stayed away.
Well, even though you were obviously looking at newspapers when you played well. Imagine you played well now. Would you?
I think with a newspaper, you look at it, and you've got, for instance, what I just said, 3 out of 5 stars, but then you ain't got 2,000 people texting you that you got 2 or 3 or 5 stars. That's my choice. I'm not getting any feedback off anyone else. That's just one guy who probably didn't even go to the game, or went to the game and didn't even know what formation we played. And Marcus Stewart played left back. No, I didn't. That's what happens in newspapers sometimes. So I haven't got no one coming back at me. That's one element I had to look at. That's the difference. So that's why I wouldn't do it.
Well, looking back, Stewie, on your, and I'm sort of flicking between your playing career and your coaching career, but on your playing career specifically, what would you say, or could you describe what the best version of Marcus Stewart looked like? Like, how did he train? What was his mind like? What was his football lifestyle like? I'm trying to get or to paint a picture for people of the best version of you and how they can try and emulate, the success that you had.
I would say, back in the day, there was a drinking culture, massively. But most teams were on a level playing field, because most teams did it. That was how it was. And it kind of created team bonding and whatever, team spirit. And there was an element of that. And then it became, probably there was times where it was actually an excuse. Let's get some team spirit going. We've got one new player in. We went out last week, but we need to get him involved in the lads. So let's all go out. There's always an excuse to go out. That was how it was. That's changed ridiculously over the years. So I'd like to think that if I was younger and that culture wasn't around, that would have made me better. So I think the best version of me is not getting involved in drink culture. Definitely wouldn't have happened now these days. Changed probably when I was about 32, 33. It started changing the way people thought. And that's when I started changing. I can't do this anymore. Took me a while to work out, but it did. And off the back of that, you train hard, you make yourself fitter, you settle your mind. because I think alcohol sometimes can play with your mind, plays with your body, that's for sure. But if you do it at the wrong times, it can affect everything in your body. That's how I see it. So that changed as I got older, because if I would have carried on, I would probably have been finished by the time I was 34. But I managed to play until I was 37. Kept myself fit. I always kept myself fit, don't get me wrong. I always trained hard. But time and age catches up with you, Joe. You know, that's how it works. So what can I do? I thought, what can I do to stem that tide? I'm not going to drink in the week. I'm not going to have a drink on a Tuesday anymore. I'm not going to have a drink on a Saturday night. If I do, I'll just be a couple and go in. And that's what I did. And that prolonged my career. I think, well, I don't think, I know. So these days, I don't think that's the case. I think there's not a massive drinking culture. I think the best to be not having a beer, training hard, with the mind I had and the psychological strength I had, seeing everything for the good, that would have been the best to me.
Yeah, I think you certainly have an edge, Stu, in terms of your mindset. And that leads me on to, well, before we get on to this last little bit, the one question that I wanted to get to sort of finalise that bit with is if you could go back to when you were playing now, what sort of advice would you give yourself?
I would say the best advice I would give myself was don't go out with them lads on a Saturday night, don't go out with them lads on a Tuesday, don't go out with them lads on a Sunday. That's what I'd say.
When the lads,
I've never told anyone this, sorry, Joe.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, you're giving me a bit of an exclusive, mate. I know, but that was football at the time, wasn't it?
Yes,
yeah.
it was. That was the year I was brought up in. And do I regret it? No, I don't, not really, because that was how it was. Do I ever have a different mindset and like not being the one that was different and not going out with the crowd? No, I made some great mates, and I've done all right out of it.
And that's even looking back on obviously the time that you had as a coach of Bristol Rovers when you went back-to-back promotions.
Yeah.
Those lads were going out most weekends because they were winning.
Yeah, but they drink rum. Ellis used to drink rum and coke and stuff like that. I might be 10 pints of lager, which is a little bit different. And I used to say to the lads, and I don't know if you remember this, you know, after a game on a Saturday, go out and do that. You know, at the time, because, and I still say this now, and this is what I believe, there has to be an element of that still happening. Sorry, excuse me. An element of that still happening. But you can't do it with a game on a Tuesday and then a game on a Saturday. And it can only be Saturday night. So if you've got a game on a Saturday and you've got a week's break, go and fill your boots, but all go out. Not two of you, not three of you, not three go out in Bath and two go out in Bristol. You all go out. And that's where Darryl was brilliant, wasn't it? If you don't go out, you've got to put 200 quid in the kitty or something like that. But on a Tuesday, if there's a game on a Tuesday, he ain't going out. No, you've got, and what we used to say was, I remember us doing team talks. Right, guys, well done today. Big game Tuesday, but there's no game next Saturday. That's next Tuesday. So, no one out tonight. Guess what? I'll see you on social media. Because someone will take a picture of you. Someone will take a video of you. And you ain't got a chance in hell. Whereas back in the day, that was no social media. Just shut the pub curtains. That was how it was. So I'm all for it. But it just has to be the right time.
It was Darryl was amazing at that. It's actually the first proper insight really I had into that sort of like, I was obviously in good teams, but I was a young player in those teams when I joined Bristol Rovers. I was obviously like a first team player ready to contribute and to be part of a proper team. And I can remember I signed in January, and the London Marathon, you actually ran it with Luke Almond was running it as well.
Yeah.
So it was a Sunday in March, I think. The PFA awards was on that Sunday night too. And we'd been given the Monday off. I think obviously Darryl was going to the awards, so he probably want the Monday off.
Well, he came to the marathon, watched the marathon, and then went to the awards.
Oh, yeah.
So I seen him right at the end. Out of all the people, I bumped into him.
And I remember this day, Marcus, because obviously the lads had said, look, we've got Monday off, lads. Let's go and watch Stewie and Luke in the marathon. We'll have a few beers and we'll all, we can take Monday off. And I remember thinking, yeah, like amazing. I don't usually do Sundays out, but yeah, I'll have that. And there was about, it must have been 12, 14 of us there in the day. Like, it was obviously a good turnout for a Sunday, bearing in mind people got families and stuff. And then when we got back in training on the Tuesday, the manager said Darryl was going, who was out on Sunday? And I remember thinking, oh, shit, I'm going to get in trouble here for being out on Sunday. And Ellis, Locks, obviously the boys who used to obviously knew you and the manager very well, went, oh, it was just listed off every player. And he went mental at the players that weren't there instead of the players that were. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like I've never experienced this before in my life. Yeah. And that was sort of like, that sort of, because I know you talk about drinking culture and stuff, but you're right. I think there are, even from someone who's playing, there's certainly definitely a right time to do it. And it can definitely have a positive impact if you do it properly.
100% can, yeah. But just choose the right times. And say Darryl was the master at that, the master of how he would manage that. It was normally, player didn't go, like you say, it was you got to get 200 quid and you'd have him in his office. You don't give that 200 quid by the end of the week, you ain't playing Saturday. And he would mean it, because he felt that those players that didn't go were kind of, he wasn't asking them to go for drinks, he was just turn up for 2 hours and just be there and then piss off or whatever. It wasn't like, right, because some players don't want to have a drink, fair enough, but you can still go for an hour, show your face, have a chat and go, I like that. There is an element, and that would never leave my mindset. That has to happen just at the right time.
Moving on, Stewie, the last thing that was sort of like last subject that I wanted to speak to you about was obviously your influence that you've had on the players that you work with. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of the strikers that you work with, especially whilst I was here in Bristol at Rovers, was, the guys' names are Ellis Harrison, Matty Taylor, Billy Bowden, even Tom Lockyer to a certain degree, even though he wasn't a striker. But these guys, not only did you have success whilst obviously with the club, but these guys have gone on to make championship appearances. Some of them obviously had really life-changing careers, and you were a huge part of that. Without obviously trying to get you to big yourself up too much, like what do you think it was about you as a coach that was able to have such a positive influence on these guys that have gone on to not only have success with you, but success after you as well?
First of all, I think a successful team helps those guys kick on. That's how I see it. If you're successful, generally, you got 4 or 5 good players in your team, and they're going to move to the next level. That's how I see it. Or eventually, if they keep going as they're going. Secondly, I think you have to be, I've always said this, you have to be transparent with those players and explain why you're doing certain things with them and have conversations, whether it's on the training field or after. So you have a connection with them. There has to be a connection with them. But on the flip side of that, thirdly, you have to have a bite when they're going from their default game or something's not quite right. You have to have the ability to have a bite at them and show your teeth sometimes. You have to be able to do that. And you have to choose that at the right time, and you can't do that all the time. Just like you can't be the nicest guy all the time. You have to choose those times. Me and Darry said, right, we've got 3 times each we can do it. Have a go at them this season. And we have to try and not pick it. But you can't do it too often. But when you do it, it has to mean something. If you do that every week, it ain't going to mean anything. Here he goes again. So that's the 3 things I kind of went with. The team's successful, they'll move on anyway. Be transparent, explain why, show them how, have conversations with them. Sometimes the conversation is going to be a difficult one, from my point of view to them, and it's going to be one way, and that's the bite, I mean. And sometimes, because you're pally with them and you've got a connection, you have to show them, not who's boss, that's the wrong word. You have to show them that sometimes, no, a bit like a father would do to a son. That's how I see it. And that's how you got to kind of be. Love them, but jump on them when
authority.
Right. Not an authority because who you are. You can't say, I'm Marcus Stewart, I'm the coach. No, it's not. You have to explain why you've done it. There would be often after a game when I would have a bit, change my tone of voice a bit, but I'd always explain why on the Sunday or the Monday why I did that. And there's one time this year, I would actually say, no, I got it wrong.
Yeah, you were good at that, actually.
I got it wrong, sorry. And I think you have to be honest, transparent, and have a bite.
So in your opinion then, obviously because this we're trying to get as much sort of key takeaways for players listening to this. There's probably parents listening to this who've obviously got children. What, in your opinion, makes an attractive player to work with?
Someone who has a brilliant work rate, okay? Someone who looks at you like a little puppy and wants to learn how to be a better puppy and to be a top dog one day.
No matter their age?
No matter their age. Listen. If you can listen, you know, if you're not academic, okay, that doesn't mean you can't be football academic.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Being football intelligence, okay, is totally different to maths, English, all that sort of stuff. If you've got football intelligence about you and you've got an ability to listen and take and get it, you've got a real chance. You've got a real chance. And what I would say to parents is, don't believe the hype sometimes of what other people are telling you about your kid. However, you listen to ask the coaches questions. Don't listen to their agents. Well, listen to them, but know which ones are telling you lies. Don't believe the hype. And I'll say this to the kids that are a bit older. Obviously, you have to listen to your parents because they're the ones that give you the ground rules and new morals. But when it comes to football, the only people you have to listen to is your coaches and the people that matter. And work out what that coach, that manager wants from you as soon as you can. That's what I'd say. Have the ability to listen. Don't believe the hype. And if you can run, you've got an ability, you've got a chance.
This football intelligence, Stewie, that obviously some people have, some people not. What do you think trying to frame this question, if there's a right age or a right time or a right way to build football intelligence, become more intelligent about the game, to understand more, like how do you suggest that people do that if for whatever reason they aren't naturally intelligent? Do you know what I mean?
The coaches these days, Joe, should have all the tools to be able to show that player, show them on a screen, TV, show them on a board, show them on the training field, talk to them about it. They've got all the tools. Now, if that coach isn't doing his job properly and not showing them things, then he's not going to get more football intelligent. So as long as the guy who's coaching that girl, boy, woman, man, does all those things, he's given that person the best chance to have a really good football intelligence, if he's not already got one. And if he or she's already got a real good football intelligence, then they should get it in a different way. I was more of a visual, so I'd look at the analysts and I'd get it, and I'd probably get out on the pitch more. Whereas everyone's different, so you have to work out which player works with whatever thing suits them, whether it's screen, out on the pitch, practical, or whether it's just shown on a tactics board.
I actually remember a time in training when, for whatever reason, the player that we'd had, or we changed the formation, and you and Darryl decided that you'd like to see me play in a holding midfield role. And
did we?
You did, yeah. And you know what? I actually was half successful at that whilst I was in. And I was like, for whatever reason, the season finished, and I never really played there again. I think he signed obviously a couple of lads to play that position, and I didn't find myself back in there. But in the period of time that I did, remember one training session where we were doing 11v11 on a Thursday or a Friday for a Saturday game, and you ran around the pitch with me, just planting seeds into my mind over what position I should be in when the ball's here, or what position's the ball in there, and that helped me ultimately learn. Sort of like, I can remember running around the pitch thinking, like the day before or the Thursday, Marcus had said, when the ball's this side, this is where I need to be, and it sort of just became like an unconscious thing that I sort of knew. But your coaching style then would literally just follow me around the pitch and just run after me, and that's something I always appreciated. But
not everyone gets that, Joe. But you did, because you were a thoughtful player. You did think about the game, but not everyone will get it that way. I just felt you needed help at that time, at that moment, because I was on the sideline, and the manager said, just get involved and have drip feed information while he's doing the coaching. That's what I did most of the time. I just felt it was time, because you being new to it, you would have done it before, but it's hard to understand what the manager wants from you, so you needed a bit of help.
Yeah.
And you weren't a dickhead, so I thought I'd
go talking of the word dickhead then, Marcus, let's flip it, because we've spoken about what makes an attractive player, especially to a coach. What makes a difficult player? What makes a dickhead? What the the personality traits of a bad
All
player.
the opposites of what I said makes it good. Someone doesn't run around. Actually, no. Someone who doesn't want to run around. Someone who thinks it's not a running game, because it is. I don't care what anyone says. It is a running game. Whether it's up and down the pitch, given an angle, across the pitch, it's a running game. You've got to be able to do that. But someone who upsets the apple cart within the team, for me, is not part of a team player. And luckily, over the years, I can suss those people out. And what I mean by that is not adding value in a positive manner, being negative around the place, like we spoke about. Complaining all the time, everything's someone else's fault. Not going out on a dinner, a lad's night out, for whatever reason. Just not wanting to get involved, or not wanting to learn, and not wanting to take advice on, whether it's from a senior player, a young player. That's what I think. The most important thing for me is his mannerisms around the rest of the group when he's not playing or she's not playing. How he affects that group when you're in the office, not seeing all that. That's the most important thing to me. And generally, if you've got a good group of lads, they'll come and tell you that anyway.
And so
what deal with that? How you need to.
And sort of getting to the end, Stewie, but what, in your opinion, then are sort of like the main attributes that players need to have these days if they're going to make it successfully in professional football?
Really strong mind.
That's massive now, isn't it?
Yep, really strong mind. That's a gimme. And really good support around him. People they can trust that aren't going to tell them what they want to hear, tell them what they need to hear, whether it's a mum, an agent, a manager, a coach, teammates. But athletic ability, for sure, and technical ability. If you've got those kind of things, and the football intelligence, whether you've got it already you can build on it through the good coaches around you. So, for instance, that's the things, Joe, in a nutshell. I remember when I was 18 years old, no, how old would I have been? About 16, 17. I was at here.
Just left school?
Just left schoolish, yeah. Might have been a first-year scholar. I remember a guy called Des Bolpin. I played for England, under 15s, back in the Victory Shield days. I don't know if you remember them.
No, I did.
They used to be on TV all the time. And I played in them games. 10 games we played. And I come back to Bristol Rovers, and I played in them games as a left winger. So I just played for England. 10 games, went away from home. It wasn't so simple these days. I couldn't just go online and book train tickets. I had to have them sent to me. All that sort of stuff. So life skills, I learned a lot in those 10 games. I came back, and a guy called Des Bolpin, who was the under-18s coach at Bristol Rovers, and he was with Jerry Francis. I remember him chatting to me. I don't know whether it was chatting in a room like this or on the training pitch, but I remember him saying to me, "You ain't quick enough to be a winger. You're never going to be a winger. I'm going to put you up front." I listened to him, and he was the first person that taught me how to bend my runs. Never heard of it before. Obviously, I was young, but I got it. And after that 2-day training session, always about bending the runs, never left my mind. I can add that to my game. I found a part of my game that I think you have to find as a young player. Find your game. Don't be something you're not. I wasn't quick, so I had to be clever with my movement. And that was the first thing I remember that could suit me. I'm not very quick, so I can do this. And they're going to be lazy, and I'm going to get in. So that was... You talk about,
you say find your game there, Stewie, but you got given a piece of information by a coach that you could have easily just tossed his opinion off, really, because you'd just been away with England and played left wing. And you could have easily come back and just gone, "No, you're wrong. Like, I've played for England in left wing, so I'm a left winger." But you didn't. You listened to his opinion, and you took it as advice, which is actually probably more difficult than what you're making it sound, because there's a lot of opinionated young guys now, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but opinionated in a way that I think it's more and more difficult the more and more coverage that there is on football, and these young players are obviously super talented, that coaching points now to players are sort of being less well received than possibly what they used to be. Do you think being coachable is, or at least being able to listen to people's opinions is a big benefit of the development of a player?
I never had an ego.
Do you think that's what it is?
Never had an ego. I never thought I knew everything in my life. I still don't think I know everything. I still don't think I have an ego. I don't think I have. It comes out now and again, but very rarely. Very rarely. So I didn't have an ego. So I'm always up for listening. And I didn't know that back then, but I know that now. And that's why I listen to him. It's quite shy and assuming, kept myself to myself. A bit like I do now. Just want a simple life. And I think that's why I listened to him, because I didn't think I knew it all. No egos.
I think
left it at the door. Actually, I don't know where I left it because I never had one.
But you could have.
I know.
Were you aware that you could have?
Yeah. Chose not to be that person.
But you must have been surrounded by people who who probably weren't performing as well as what you were, but did have an ego.
That's their problem.
Yeah. Not bothered?
No. Not one little bit.
What do you think the benefit of...
I just don't hang around. I'm not... Yeah. Even to this day, if you got an ego, I ain't gonna be your mate. I'll have a chat with you, but are you gonna say fancy a beer? Not gonna happen to this day.
All right, Stewie, just, one, I really appreciate your time, mate. I know you're getting pulled around all over the place at the moment, and I actually made a conscious decision in sort of the build up to this, Stewie, as to I wanted this to be all about your football and your opinions on football, and not necessarily what you've spoken about recently with the MND diagnosis and things like that. However, I must feel like I'll mention it now because we're sat in Memorial Stadium, and obviously there's a charity game happening in the summer that we're hoping to raise a lot of money for. A golf day on the day before that I'm going to have to start going to the driving range to practice with. But I didn't want to leave this conversation without mentioning to people that that is happening, and your ability, obviously, we're talking about you being able to see the positives and stuff, mate, and still have an incredible influence on people, and that's sort of shining through now, more so than ever. So thank you so much, Stewie, for having me, for giving me your opinion and giving me an insight into your experiences, because we don't always get to speak to guys who've had such successful careers like you have. So it means a lot to me that you've been able to do this for me. So I want to say thank you big time.
Nice to see you again, Joe.
Cheers, Stewie.